Who is Tennessee's Jalen Hurts? Now, it you're not going to get an exact storyline like Jalen Hurts is, but what I mean is for those who obviously
Oh,
don't remember.
I've got one.
Oh, okay. Dave's got one. All right. We're going to wait on this. But basically, a story of perseverance to a degree. For those who don't remember, Jalen Hurts was benched in the 2017 national title game against when Alabama was playing Georgia due to ineffective play. Tua Tagovailoa came in, led Alabama back, won the national title. Obviously, was going to be the starter for the rest of the next year. Jalen Hurts stayed with the program the next year at Alabama, developed under Saban and Brian Dabble, then transferred out because he just couldn't beat out Tua. Transferred out, went somewhere else, but then got drafted. And 5 years later is now a Super Bowl. 6 years later is now a Super Bowl MVP. So this is kind of a lesson of, I mean, it's a great lesson in life of just not quitting on yourself when something bad happens to you. It is the quintessential lesson of that, because if a quarterback gets benched in college for another quarterback, their careers are usually all but over. But Jalen Hurts, it was not, and he is now officially a Super Bowl MVP, which Tua Tagovailoa is not, even though I would say that Tua is better still than Jalen Hurts. But still, the question becomes, because of that, who is Tennessee's Jalen Hurts? What is a story of perseverance?
Okay. Tua is a better quarterback if things are going right from the neck up, right?
Yes, if he's healthy, I guess we should say.
Yeah. I mean, if you put the two together and an NFL scout looked at them, they would say the Tua guy's better. But I need to see his medical history. That would be the concern. All right. So carrot cake, by the way, is 50-50, which means I did a great job picking a question. Anytime we get dead even, then we've done a great job. It's 50-50. So I've got the one for you. And it really feels, you're going to be surprised. It feels pretty much all the parameters you laid out. I mean, it really does. So let me ask you to come up with 3 on your own, because I hate to do it, but do you ever play, you never play Rook, do you? It's like spades.
No, I never have.
Okay. So I'm going to play Rook, and I'm going to throw down the bird card here in a second. Not that bird card. I'm going to throw down the bird card here in a second.
What if I accidentally name yours when I name the 3?
Well, we discussed it this morning, and I kept mine to myself. Okay, so give it go. Ooh, raisins and carrot cakes. Gross, Derek. What are you talking about? All right, I just lost me completely. All right, so give me your 3. Go ahead and put them on the YouTube page, and then I've got one that's going to completely trump you. And let's discuss them. Or actually, I'll put them on the YouTube page, and you go through your 3. You get 3, I get 1, and I bet you I win hands down.
All right, so I got 3. So
this best Vol comeback story,
best Vol perseverance story.
Okay.
So I got 3, and one's already mentioned on the message board because Hendon Hooker is on there for me to a degree, because Hendon Hooker was thrown under the bus at Virginia Tech. Exactly what Dylan says. Thrown under the bus at Virginia Tech, hits the portal, goes to Tennessee, loses the starting job to a younger quarterback, despite outplaying that younger quarterback, and everybody feeling that Hooker should be the starter, according to a lot of reports to people who saw practice.
Okay, now you're playing me a little loose here, because I thought you had to have success in the NFL, but I'm going to give you Hooker. Hooker has hung on in the NFL, and if not for that golf extension.
No, I'm just talking perseverance in general, of any kind, a level of perseverance.
Okay.
So,
well, then you have to. I mean, but if you started all that, then you would have to put guys like Billy Ratliff on it. I mean, Billy Ratliff shouldn't have been on the field this senior year. The guy was been through a MASH unit. But anyway, we'll go with bigger names, even though Billy Ratliff would have been.
Well, I'm going with Hooker because, like, yes, health is part of it, but this is a guy that lost his starting job twice and became a beloved quarterback at Tennessee. So that's why I went with Hendon Hooker, because of how he lost his starting job. So I'll go Hendon Hooker.
Joe Milton is better. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I think I would go. I mean, I'm between like 2 players on the 98 national title team but I don't know who between the 2. Because there was Travis Henry, who was destined to ride the bench all 4 years at Tennessee with Jamal Lewis until Jamal Lewis got hurt and went down, and Travis Henry showed what he could do.
Okay, I would though say with Travis Henry, he was tied in because of a scholarship. So, it's not like he really had his own choice.
But that's my point, though. It's like, yeah, that's why I thought he was destined to ride the bench. Imagine he's probably thought he was stuck on the bench because he was tied into a scholarship and Jamal Lewis was going to be the starter. But I'm between him and like T. Martin, who, look, T. Martin willingly, imagine the humiliation when you're T. Martin, when Peyton Manning announces he's staying for his senior season and everybody gets up and cheers and says, yes, yes, yes. If you're T. Martin, don't you feel a little bit like, wow, everybody's really happy I'm not going to be quarterback for them next year?
Uncle Dave's story. So I was going to a communications class and I parked across from the athletic center where they had the announcement. And I was late for class. It was like a 10:20 class and the press conference was at 10:30 and I was going to listen. So you remember the Fabulous Sports Babe, probably a way before your time. But anyway, she's like, Peyton Manning's definitely going to the NFL. There's no question about it. She's going to the NFL. I mean, come on, he's going. What are you? And so I sat there, and the weird part is because of the tape delay, I heard the cheers across the street about 3 seconds before I heard them over the radio. And then I just sat there and missed all of class so that I could listen to the Fabulous Sports Babe eat crow.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's hilarious. That's a good one.
I sat there and I heard it, and I've decided to. And before he said anything, you go, Wah! And you're like, well, he didn't just decide to transfer to Kentucky. All right, what else you got?
All right, so I'll stick with T. Martin then. So I'll go T. Martin, and I'll go the Hendon Hooker, and then I'll go. I know I made exceptions for injuries, but because he fell to the 6th round, I'm going to go Trey Smith on this. I think so many people wrote off Trey Smith.
No, I think that's a good one, and he's getting ready to get paid. I think this is a payday year, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, he may have hurt his offers after how he played last night because Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter did a number on him. But
but you got to know as well as I do, there are like 31 other teams that would go ahead and pay him. I mean, yeah. The Chiefs may not, but somebody's going to pay him.
By the way, great saying since we're doing this topic before you say yours. Jalen Hurts got benched in the national title game for ineffective play against Georgia's defense. He then teamed up with Georgia's defense and won a Super Bowl in the NFL. Because the whole Eagles defense is just Georgia players.
Okay. Now, here are mine that are up there. And again, it is today's tough question. It's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. So, Caleb, read the 4 that we have up there now. Don't give us any numbers yet. I know you love to tease the numbers. Like 34, 26, 34. All right, so what are the numbers? Don't tease the numbers. What are they?
Hendon Hooker, T. Martin, Trey Smith. Somehow Trey Smith does not have a Y in his name when Dave spells it. And Reggie White. Interesting. Is that because he got drafted to the USFL?
Stay tuned. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
Whoa, easy. All right, it's okay. Caleb, let me go ahead and tell you why it's Reggie White. Reggie White took a shot at the USFL. That was terrible, right? That didn't work out. Worked out longer than most, but didn't quite work out. And then you had a guy named Reggie White that was a junior in college at UT. And you may not know this, but that Reggie White was terrible. Absolutely terrible when he was a junior. His senior year, he put it together. He could have quit. He could have gotten on they say the last stop before offensive line is the bus stop, or the last stop after. He could have been moved to the offensive line, and boy, wouldn't have that changed history. Or he could have just quit altogether. but he put it all together and he had a fantastic senior year. Now, let me tell you why I think that Reggie White overcame as much as Jalen Hurts, if not more. Reggie White, in case you didn't know, was an African-American individual in a time that it was difficult to be an African-American individual. And Reggie White took a lot of stands on black churches being burned. And whatever you think of that, I know what you should think of that, but whatever you think of that, he put himself out there as a possible target. So that to me is even more impressive about Reggie White. He overcame the negative publicity because he believes so much in himself, which was, I stole that term from you earlier in the program. The other thing is the Eagles didn't appreciate him. They thought they had it all going on with the Mike Golics of the world, the Jerome Brown, rest his soul. They thought they had it all going on. Andre Dirty Waters. I can go on because I hate that team almost as much as I love the Cowboys. And they're like, Reggie, we don't think you'll actually go to that Green Bay there. And he did. And Green Bay was a laughing stock, Caleb, a laughing stock. And when he got there, he changed the culture of that entire team, and they won a championship. Caleb, I give you Reggie White.
I mean, I can't. It's hard to disagree with the case you make. I think the thing is, everybody knew though how good Reggie White well, I don't know if everybody knew, but I mean, it seemed like it very clear that Reggie White was a good player, just wasn't putting it together, and finally did.
And that could have been a maturation process. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was a late bloomer. I got more athletic from 18 to 22 than previously. So maybe he was just a late bloomer, but still, he could have quit that freshman, sophomore, and junior year.
Right. Yes, he definitely could have. That's very true. And when you talk the NFL, did people just think that Buddy Ryan was the brains behind Reggie White's success during that time?
That was the first year of free agency. So you had to decide. I mean, Jerome Brown in his own right would have been a Hall of Famer. Mike Golic was a borderline Hall of Famer. I'm missing somebody if you guys want to help me on the message board. But I think you had to make a decision over a lot of great players. They had oh my gosh, it was Joyner. He was a linebacker. I mean, that team was loaded. So they were kind of like the Cowboys in the 90s, where you were so loaded on defense that you had to let some of those guys go. And that's Reggie White they let go. And let's give it up for Reggie White to believe in this free agent system and move. I mean, that was a big deal. That was Kurt Flood type stuff. I mean, nobody did that back then, Caleb. Not a big name like that.
No, you're right. Not at all. And also, one of the things, one of my youngest memories.
I'm sorry, he paved the way for Deion Sanders to do it.
That is true. It's funny you bring this up. One of the interesting things that I think about this, and it's one of the things that stands out to me about Reggie White is one of my first early memories of watching football. And I remember when Green Bay was going for the repeat and everybody thought they'd beat the Broncos and the Broncos win, John Elway's first ring where Terrell Davis just torches them. Reggie White really went out in front of all the cameras and took full blame for the Packers rush defense that day and the way they struggled to stop. I mean, more than anybody else, he willingly walked to the cameras and stood out for all of his teammates and was basically like, I never should have let this happen. And we didn't do what we should have done today. And I don't know. It always stands out to me it's kind of always been kind of my knock of Cam Newton, which is that, I don't know, when it always stands out to me when players face the media after the most gut-wrenching loss of their life. You know what I mean? And that's the number one time they don't want to be there. And they don't just face you, but they give you good answers and thoughtful answers to what they're talking about. And he did that.
Can you ever imagine, this is African-American month, can you imagine an athlete that would put himself in harm's way publicly from a public relations standpoint and go, I'm talking feet on the ground. I'm not talking about putting together a foundation. I'm talking about feet on the ground, going to churches, pointing at them, saying, this isn't right. This is an African-American church, and it got burned to the ground. that would have cost him millions of endorsement dollars, and perhaps even hurt his value as a football player, which sounds crazy.
No, I mean, that's what people criticize about today's athletes. It's not because they all love to take stands, but they only take stands insofar as it doesn't hurt their salary or it doesn't hurt their pay.
Yep.
You know, and that's always like, no one does the Muhammad Ali thing, which is to say that, oh, I literally gives up his titles in the middle of his prime for his stance. And by the way, the funny thing I found out, people try to say, well, he was just trying to dodge the draft. Muhammad Ali could have gotten some random, like, title job is probably what he would have gotten if he went to the war and would never have been in harm's way. And he still took that stance. Like, they weren't going to make him go see combat, honestly. So
No, agreed. And there's a documentary I want to see about his relationship with Malcolm X. Some of our listeners probably don't want to hear a review of that, but they had a really close kinship. And there's another documentary. I'm a OJ buff, like I've seen everything that's been done, but there's a new one that's kind of in retrospect after all these years that has actually provided some new stuff. So I'll tell you more about that. Yeah. But it is incredibly interesting. Are you an OJ buff?
I'm sorry?
Are you an OJ buff?
I mean, I'm younger than you, so I only remember OJ the murderer. So I had to go back and look in history to know about OJ the player and how.
Well, I'm not old enough to remember him playing.
No, but you remember him as a football guy probably first more than the murderer because you remember him in the 80s.
No, I remember him as the actor pitch guy, like running through the
See, I guess
running away from the police in the airport.
Wouldn't OJ have been kind of like the Michael Strahan of his time before the trial?
Before the double murder?
Yes. Wouldn't he have been like this TV guy that's, does all this TV stuff, but also does Sunday football talk and like is a Hall of Famer? Like, it was kind of a Michael Strahan type, wasn't he?
Yeah.
To a certain degree. And yeah, by the way, one other Vol Jalen Hurts we got to bring up is, what about Eric Berry? I mean, that dude's career should have been done twice.
Okay. You got to drop one of your guys and put him up there. Where are the standings right now?
Reggie White leads by plurality at 33%, then Hendon Hooker 29, T Martin or Trey Smith, and then T Martin. I think I'll drop T Martin because I don't think, like, yes, T Martin gets credit for staying, but he was always didn't everybody know he was going to be the starter after Peyton Manning like 2 years before? Like, wasn't he always in line to replace Peyton Manning once Peyton Manning left?
Yeah, it was gutsy that he stayed, but not really because he was stuck. I mean, he was stuck for another year. There is no way that he was going to be able to go back to Alabama because the coaching staff then wouldn't have let him, and you had to release people or they had to pay on their own. So there was no way that was going to happen. So, yeah, I want to see what it is with Eric Berry. So Eric Berry deserves to be on there. I feel like we've really dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah,
all right.
I mean,
bank on it. Yeah, bank on it. Tennessee's immediate boost with its 2025 class. So Caleb and I are each going to choose 3 people that we think are just bank on it guys. They're going to have a huge impact, and it doesn't matter that they're true freshmen. We'll discuss some transfers as well if you would like to. But Caleb, let me get your 3 when you had a bank on it as far as guys that will be. And I'm sure there'll be some overlap. We'll make it our YouTube poll. Continue to vote right now on the YouTube if you would like. Right now, the choices are Eric Berry, Reggie White, Hendon Hooker, Trey Smith. That's going to have to sort itself out a little bit. Inky Johnson is a very good one, William. Inky, though, more as a person than as a football player because of his ailment. So that's why we wouldn't include him.